Saturday's News.
Hello, welcome to Old News, the programme which looks at news of today through the papers of yesterday. I noticed the Mayor was back in the news again this week. Never far from the news, the Mayor of Douglas, I suppose. But it just set me thinking about mayors, so we had a quick ponder back into the archives. The Mayor of Douglas in America was the title of an article in the Ramsey Weekly News of Saturday, November the 20th, 1897. Interviews and festivities, we're told. Major Stephen H.K., Mayor of Douglas, in the course of his wanderings around the globe, has brought up in Cleveland, Ohio, where, as natural, he's been feted by the numerous Manx colony and lionised by the warm-hearted Americans. We take the following extract from the Cleveland Plain Denier of September the 10th as a fair sample of what the Yankees think of our Bobby and what he thinks of them. Good old Bobby the Mayor. Mr. R. Stephen of Douglas, the Isle of Man, is at the Holland, and he is a man of parts. When at home, being Mayor of Douglas, a member of the Manx Parliament, and a Major of the 7th, and then unfortunately part of it is missing, Regiment of Man VB, the King's Liverpool Regiment. Stephen is taking a trip around the world, and like an experienced traveller, he is proceeding leisurely. He is not tied to time or any hard and fast itinerary, and that is the reason he has come to Cleveland. He heard that it had the largest Manx colony in the States. I believe it still has a sizable Manx colony, and fetched a compass in his wanderings to rub shoulders with compatriots. I feel very much at home here already, said Mr. Stephen yesterday afternoon, for there are so many of my own people here. The entire population of the Isle of Man is only 53,000, and you have over 5,000 Manxmen here, I am told. Douglas, of which I am mayor, only has 23,000, so you really have a city of Manx people within your walls. The thing that impresses me most in your country is the large scale on which everything is done. Your streets, for instance, are so wide and your buildings so high. I noticed that in New York, and it struck me afresh here in Cleveland. And the beautiful way in which the trees are interspersed among the buildings in this city appeals most directly to me. Out on Euclid Avenue, I think you call it, there are beautiful lawns, and your architecture is so varied. The Manx people are growing away from many of their quaint social customs since modern navigation has put them in quick touch with the rest of the world, but we still hold fast to our primitive ways in government and the making and proclaiming of the laws, as indeed we still do today, over 100 years later. The Isle of Man has its own government. The Queen appoints a governor, but the other officers are of our own selection. The Manx Parliament, which meets in the House of Keys, has 24 members, of which I have the honour to be one, and it makes all the laws for the island subject to the approval of the Queen. They are not legal, even when she has graciously approved of them, until they are officially promulgated to the people from Tynwald Hill by the Deemster, an official who corresponds to your Chief Justice. I should say only he has the power of life and death. In many respects, we are most progressive, although the general opinion regards us as rather narrow and conservative. Same could be said today, perhaps. Why, do you know that we have had women's suffrage ever since 1880, and it has proved very successful? Quite right, too. I have been interested in this American trip in noting the prosperity that has come to the Manx in this country. All appear to be doing exceedingly well. Well, you couldn't disagree with that, could you? Also in the Peel City Guardian of 1898, September the 24th, we hear the Mayor of Douglas in the States, the Manx American citizens of Cleveland, gave dinner at the Stillman last night to His Worship, Major R.S. Stephen, the Mayor of Douglas, Isle of Man. The dinner served in a special parlour, which was artistically decorated for the occasion in the national Manx colours. The tables were arranged in a gigantic T, and the guest of honour, flanked on one side by Mayor McKisson, sat at the head of the T. Back of him was a Manx flag bearing the island's characteristic emblem. Mr. William R. Creer acted as toastmaster. Speeches were made by Major Stevens, almost an American in his ease as an after-dinner talker. Mayor McKisson, Dr. Corlett, Clucas Collister, W.S. Carouche and Joseph Oldham, the Cleveland Plain Dealer of September the 11th. It's listed as denier in the other papers, but dealer it is, I would believe. Did he spend much time actually mayoring in Douglas, we wonder? In 1897, in the Ramsey Weekly News, Saturday, November the 20th, we read that the Mayor of Douglas goes to church. You wouldn't have thought that was news really, but apparently it was a bit of a custom. In accordance with annual custom, the Mayor of Douglas, Major Stephen, HK, JP, VD, etc., attended St George's Church in State last Sunday, owing to the weather being so extremely wet and stormy, no change there then, and for other reasons the procession was only of small dimensions, and the service lost much of its impressiveness from the scanty attendance. The procession was headed by the band of the 7th VB Isle of Man King's Liverpool Regiment, with a good muster of the members of the corps, of which the Mayor is commanding officer, following his representatives of the various friendly societies, the Lifeguard Committee, the School Committee, the Hospital Committee, the Poor Relief Committee, and the House of Industry Committee came next, and then the official staff of the corporation, which were all listed. The officiating clergy were the Venerable the Archdeacon, the Reverend R.B. Barron, and the Reverend E.W. Hopkins. Such hymns were sung, and the choir gave the anthem, "Oh, how amiable are thy dwellings," by Barnby, we're told. In the Isle of Man Examiner, Saturday, October the 5th, 1902, volunteer shooting. Doesn't sound a particularly good idea for volunteers. Presentation by the Mayor of Douglas. The Mayor of Douglas, after receiving Lord Raglan on arrival at the Victorian Pier last Saturday, drove in state to the headquarters of the 7th Isle of Man Volunteer Battalion, the King's Liverpool Regiment, for the purpose of handing over to bandsman J.T. Wood the handsome cup of sterling silver, which he presented to the Corps for competition at the rifle butts in commemoration of the coronation of their Majesties, the King and Queen, and which trophy had been won by bandsman Wood. Accompanying the Mayor were the Mayoress and Miss Webb, and the function took place in the Drill Hall. Captain Mackenzie, on behalf of the Corps, congratulated the Mayor on being so far restored to health as to be able personally to present the handsome cup he had given. It was a matter of great regret to them all, as to everyone in Douglas, that his worship had been laid aside for such a long period during the summer. They were glad to see him improving again. And continuing, Captain Mackenzie said the cup had given rise to a very lively and keen competition to which 5 days had been devoted. Upwards of 140 rounds of ammunition had been expended to win it. So they weren't shooting volunteers, it was, yes, you get the gist of it. The Mayor of Douglas in a new role, the Ramsey Courier tells us, on Friday, December the 29th, 1922. The kindness and forethought of the Mayor of Douglas, Councillor A.B. Crookall, MHKJP, will not long be forgotten by some 1,000 of the poorest children of the town of Douglas who were visited in person by Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. The names of those children most deserving of the provision given by the Mayor were obtained from the various school authorities in the town. Early on Sunday afternoon, 4 loaded motor lorries arrived at the Douglas Town Hall, and the parcels were then packed away. Each parcel was labelled and addressed. The boys received balls and toys, and the girls big dolls, while the older children received books. Each parcel also contained fruit and sweets and a little greeting card. The parts of Santa Claus were taken by the Mayor, Mr. A. Robertson, Mr. Noah Moore, and Mr. F. P. Bunting, the town being divided into 4 districts. The scene in the town at the time of the distribution was one of considerable enjoyment. Well, I imagine it would be. The Isle of Man Examiner, April the 16th, that's a Friday, 1926. The Mayor of Douglas on British holidays. The Mayor of Douglas, Mr. A.B. Crookall, HK, has identified himself with the campaign now being conducted by the Daily Sketch under the slogan, "British holidays are best." Writing in that journal a few days ago, His Worship says, "The Daily Sketch campaign is warmly approved by the people of the Isle of Man. I've visited the continent on several occasions, and the wonder to me is that so many go ahead considering the difficulties of customs. The luggage and passport examination at Calais is a nightmare. At times the whole place is a pandemonium." Nothing's changed there then. Then there is the uninteresting railway journey to Paris or the Riviera or Switzerland, including a comfortless night in the train for those who are not blessed with plenty of cash. British money would be spent to greater advantage in British holiday resorts. The chairman of the Ramsey Town Commissioners, Mr. J. N. Richdale, MP, has also joined in the campaign. He writes, "As an Englishman now resident in this beautiful island and having the honour of being elected first citizen of Ramsey, I'd venture to draw the attention of many countrymen to its many attractions. Its beautiful scenery and its surroundings, its unrivalled facilities for bathing, clear water, shore composed of sand, firm and fine, with a narrow margin of small gravel, and its delightful climate challenged comparison with anything the continent can offer. As a holiday resort of a quieter and more exclusive character, Ramsey is hard to equal. Ramsey, the Riviera, no choice. The Daily Sketch, after reproducing this letter, goes on to say, the Isle of Man is one of the acknowledged holiday resorts of the British Isles. It is an island of samples within a small area. It provides for the taste of every holidaymaker. There is work for the mountain climber and moorland tramps for the confirmed pedestrian. Its seaside towns and village provide bathing, boating and fishing, and nestling in the valleys are quaint, old-world villages and unchanging farmsteads. Well, I think, again, we could say little has changed. We are still trying to attract the British holidaymaker to the Isle of Man, just under 100 years on. How much success we have, I'll leave to you to decide. And finally, a heartwarming story from the Ramsey Courier of Friday, August the 22nd, 1941. The Mayor of Douglas adopts blitzed baby from Ramsey Hostel. The Mayor of Douglas, Councillor J.C. Farger, is among the latest party of Manx people to adopt one of the blitzed babies from the Lancaster House Hostel. A bright little chap from Merseyside smiled his way into the affections of the Mayor as soon as he landed on Victoria Pier, and in a day or two he will go into his new home for the duration of the war. Anybody visiting the hostel will be struck at once by the brightness and happiness of everything that is being done under the guidance of the matron, Mrs. Brown. The children are a lovely bunch, well behaved and obviously enjoying their sojourn in the Isle of Man. Several of the children have known no other bedroom for months than Liverpool air raid shelters. When a Courier reporter called unexpectedly at the hostel this week, he saw the little toddlers romping about on the Ballure shore, playing with their buckets and spades and enjoying life generally. A visit to this place is sufficient to convince anyone of the fine work that is being done. And fine work it was too. A taste of some of the stories concerning the Mayor of Douglas over the last century or so, and we still have a Mayor of Douglas performing a valuable role, albeit perhaps more ceremonial now than of yore. Still good to have one though, I would say. Whatever way you look at it, it's old news, of course. We'll be back here same time next week. Cheerio. You're gonna be yesterday's news.